Good morning. Welcome into Let's Bet It here on Pickswise, Pickswise.com. I'm Mark Zinno, joined by Jared Smith. Week 9 in the NFL, getting underway here in just a few hours. We've got a lot to get to. We'll update you with some injuries as well. We'll look at some line moves. We'll get it propping with Bobby Stanley, a.k.a. Prop Holliday, as well. Week key 9 games. We'll talk teasers and, of course, our plays of the day. Make sure you subscribe to the Pickswise YouTube channel. Let us know in the comments what picks you are on or have questions of. We'll get to them all as well. Make sure you download the Pickswise app, available on the Apple Store and Google Play. Jared, happy Sunday. Good morning to you. Week 9, a bounce-back day for some of us, but a good day for others.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if yesterday was any indication, we're in store for more madness today. Thankfully, we don't have an NFL committee telling us who the number one team is. We don't really need one. I think we know. But the committee swing and a miss with their top 4 yesterday. 2 losers, and let's be honest, Clemson as the 4th team, they got a lot of heat for that last week, and I think the criticism was warranted based on their performance last night.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do coming out with the rankings on Tuesday as they get the second installment of the college football playoff rankings. But let's turn back to the NFL here, Jared. A lot to get to. Some quick injury updates that we're looking at here for some games. I'll run down the list here real quick. Packers left tackle David Bakhtiari, questionable for their game against the Lions. Devontae Parker will not play for the Patriots against the Colts. Cameron Brate ruled out by the Buccaneers against the Rams. Bill safety Jordan Poyer has been ruled out against the Jets. Chuba Hubbard out against the Cincinnati Bengals. It looks like they plan to make running back DeAndre Swift inactive. We'll wait with his shoulder injury. Not 100% sure yet. What's the latest that we're hearing and seeing? Any other injuries of note? Which one of these stands out to you as something that's going to possibly change the outcome of a game this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think Poyer, we've seen that Bills line come down pretty significantly, throughout the week. I even saw a 10.5 this morning pop up on my screen. Yeah, mostly 11.5 across the board. But at some point, based off of the exposure that I'm looking at, it looks like the Jets are a pretty heavy bet this week. At some point, you would think the value would flip back to Buffalo, but what number? You would think so. I mean, listen, Bakhtiari, Green Bay's had these issues all year with their offensive line. Jenkins has been nicked up too. They moved him out to tackle. They've been switching guards and tackles. It's been like a revolving door. And I did read this morning too that the Packers made another move or tried to make another move by getting Darren Waller, which proved unsuccessful. So Green Bay, you would imagine spirits aren't very high this week after some other teams made some trade deadline maneuvers, and Aaron Rodgers is still stuck there with, very limited weapons at his disposal. So we'll see what the vibe is in Green Bay. Usually when they go to Detroit on the fast track in the Motor City, they tend to play pretty well. Even though they don't cover a whole lot, they do win those games. Short number today. So I would say Green Bay and Buffalo are the 2 favorites that I'm curious to see if some of these injuries and some of these other roster maneuvers are going to impact the game today.
Yeah, a couple other line moves as well. The Jaguars-Raiders game. Raiders are now favored by 2 after it opened at a pick. The Cardinals were 3-point favorites and now down to 2-point favorites. It's kind of been holding at 2 for a better part of the week here. And the Colts now up to the Patriots rather up to -6 over the Indianapolis Colts, who are won't have Jonathan Taylor, it looks like, for the game today. It'll be Deion Jackson in the backfield. I got to tell you, Jared, when I saw the Cardinals-Seahawks line, for some strange reason, my mind went, take the Cardinals, take the Cardinals, take the Cardinals. And then you started doing research, and everything you look at says Seahawks, 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 Seahawks. So I'll probably stay off the game, but I'm just kind of curious. I mean, I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop on Seattle. I guess I'm the last person, thinking that eventually it might fall apart for them. They might have a bad game. So I've mostly stayed off of Seattle games this year. But, that's an interesting one, considering that Arizona still, mathematically, obviously, has designs on making the playoffs and possibly a wild card. They would need a divisional win in their pocket here. At home, where they've been worse, it's going to be an interesting game.
Yeah, and this game was tight a couple of weeks ago. Low scoring, too. Probably one of the more lower scoring games, I think, besides that Seattle-Denver game that the Seahawks have faced this year. Of course, their defense has been, I would say improving. I think Clint Hurt deserves some credit for the Seahawks. It hasn't been a very good unit, but they have a lot of rookies a young defense that's improving. Arizona, the big issue that I have with the Cardinals right now is their offensive line. Garcia out, Hudson out. I mean, that's the entire interior, the meaty center of the interior of that offensive line. And you see the pressure up the middle. And Kyler Murray can diagnose it. He's pretty quick. But that's the big issue that I see. Now, can Seattle's defense take advantage of that? We'll see. I will give this this is the shot across the bow. This line was Cardinals -7 when our friends over at the Westgate made their look-ahead lines over the summer. So we have seen considerable opposite directions of both ratings since. Obviously now down through both key numbers. Open 7. Last week it was 4. And now we're seeing it beneath that key number of 3 at 2. The value certainly says take Arizona, but then you start to look at some of those things that I'm sure you were looking at, maybe on the defensive side, and then, of course, the offensive line, and you think Seattle might be able to have some sustained success moving the ball in this game. We'll see what the running game looks like. Seattle's offensive line's actually played pretty well in front of Geno Smith, all things considered. They've got a couple of tackles. The rookie Charles Cross has played very well. So I could see Seattle continuing their success, but, I mean, listen, at some point, is Geno due for a clunker? Sure. He's played beyond our wildest dreams this season. It has been remarkable to watch him rejuvenate his career. The other line that's intriguing, this Jaguars-Raiders game, I did get in front of it this week. I dropped my best bet on Wednesday on Pickswise.com's site, 3-star on the Raiders. -1. It's out to 2.5 now. I don't feel as confident at 2.5. We're talking with Jacob before the game. I have a funny feeling this game probably lands 2. I don't know why, but I just have a feeling it lands 2. I hope it doesn't. I hope it lands 22. But that's a pretty big move considering that, Raiders haven't really played that well, and we're seeing significant movement in their direction. We'll see if it touches 3. I don't think it will, but maybe it'll get close.
Interesting to note as well, there are 2 double-digit spreads left on the board this week. We talked about the Bills over the Jets, but also the Chiefs laying 12.5 to the Titans. We've seen big numbers, not come in, and some outright winners against big numbers earlier this year, Jared. Between these 2 games, if you had to lay it, which team would you more likely lay it with, the Chiefs or the Bills?
It's a good question. Yeah, and a good call by you on Thursday night. The Texans did just enough in that game, and that's really all it takes when you're a 14-point underdog. It takes that one sequence, like the fumble for Jalen Hurts or that drive at the end of the first half for the Texans. In the NFL, that big of a spread, the margin for error for covering is very thin. I mean, if you want to straight fade what the public has done this week, which, you can do that strategy till you're blue in the face, sometimes it's successful. Sometimes it's not. This year it has not been as successful as prior years. Then the Bills would be the play because the Jets have taken a ton of action this week. I saw a 5-figure bet on the Jets. People seem to think that the points are, at a premium in that game compared to the Chiefs game where I think I've seen some actual sharp play on Kansas City a little bit more than I have on the Jets. I mean, than I have on the Chiefs. I mean, the Titans. So that game's a little bit more confusing, I think. I think it's obvious to me that the market favors the Jets. So if you want to fade that action and get a little bit of value, I would say the Bills to me, just because of the uncertainty with the Titans and who plays quarterback. There's a lot of variance in that situation. It could go positively. And by the way, if it is Hooker, that line's going to move through 14 very quickly. And we won't know till later tonight. Yeah. Sorry, Willis. What did I say? Hooker? Hendon Hooker.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be Hendon Hooker next season for the Titans. But yeah, if it's that's a good catch. If it's Malik Willis for the Titans, that line will blow through 14 very quickly. And I think I'm wearing the Jets shirt because I'm a fan, but I do think the Jets are due for some really poor performances after what they've done the last few weeks.
Here's the thing with the Jets that you have to acknowledge. Like we talk so much about game script and turnovers not being predictive, right? The way Zach Wilson has played, it just boils down to how much faith you have in that he can play a clean game and not make any mistakes. I mean, it boils down. And when you get to that level of variance for me, it's hard to back a team when I can't have any sort of faith that a quarterback can go 4 quarters without making just an awful, horrible decision that's going to hurt the team. I mean, in the NFL, especially with numbers as big, one turnover could change the entire outcome of a game. And so, and the flow of the game and everything else, depending on when it happens and how the team responds, that's the thing you have to decide with the Jets. We've seen sort of Zach Wilson, I think, peak this year, and everything looks like it's starting to go on a downslope, particularly what we saw last week from him against the Patriots. And I don't know what the heck he was trying to do throwing that ball away, but nonetheless, that's what you have to live with when you bet on the Jets is Zach Wilson going to play you a good, clean game, or is he going to play you a bad game? And until we get some better grip on that, it's hard for me to back the Jets. We know their defense is going to be great, right? We know their defense is going to be able to slow teams down. But the question is, if you turn the ball over on your own half of the field and the other team only has to go 30 yards to put a score in, the Jets defense can be great all they want. Yeah, there's a big difference stopping them on their own 20 going 30 yards and stopping them on your 20 and having to go 30 yards. I mean,
you're right.
The whole thing.
I wrote about this in the column this week because I this number has been curiously active this week for being such a big number. And I was surprised at how many people, sharps, whatever you want to call it, have been willing to run over man, woman, and child to bet the Jets this week because Zach Wilson is grading out as the worst quarterback under pressure. The Bills are one of the best teams in the league at generating pressure without blitzing. They just get there with their front four. And then, oh, by the way, if that turnover does happen, it's Josh Allen taking over at whatever yard line Zach Wilson gives up the ball in. The Diggs, I will have my popcorn ready for Diggs on Sauce. The Sauce-Diggs matchup, I hope they slot it out that way. You never know. Sometimes they move these guys around. But I want to see who gets the better of that matchup today. I'll be looking at the post-game numbers to see how many times they were matched up against each other. Because right now, you can make a case that Sauce Gardner is the best cover corner in the league based off of some of the numbers I look at on Pro Football Focus. And, I mean, he's only played 9 games or 8 games. This is his 9th game today. So that's pretty impressive stuff for Sauce. But, yeah, I think the volatility of Zach Wilson makes it hard to bet this game in either direction. I like the under, too. But then I think to myself, well, what if Zach can't move the ball and then he throws the interception on his own 20-yard line and it breeds points. So tough to bet, I think, either here in the double-digit category. I would prefer the Bills, though, if I had to pick one or the other.
All right, well, let's turn our attention to some props here in the NFL. Let's get propping. As he joins us every week, Bobby Stanley, a.k.a. Prop Holliday, joins us here on Let's Bet It here on Pickswise, Pickswise.com and the Pickswise YouTube channel. Bobby, good morning. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here on this lovely Sunday, Week 9 in the NFL.
Mark and Jared, happy Sunday, fellas. What's going on?
All right, let's get it started with you here. A couple of props you're looking at. I got to go with this one first because who isn't interested in the inaugural Kirk Cousins Classic as Kirk Cousins and the Vikings return to Washington, D.C. to take on the artist formerly known as the Redskins, now the Commanders. Kirk Cousins over 1.5 passing touchdowns. So you like him to have a good game against his former team.
You like that. You like that.
I do like that. Kirk Cousins over the 1.5 passing touchdowns. I think it's like -120, -122, depending where you get it. So he hit it in 4 of the last 7. He's hit it in 2 of the last 3. Yes, there's the revenge factor with the Commanders, but I don't consider that really much sort of an edge. It's more of kind of an outside game script thing. According to PFF, Cousins has a 32-2 touchdown to interception ratio against man defenses over the last 3 seasons. The Commanders settle into man defense, the 7th highest rate in the league. So I do think there's a bit of an edge there. Washington has given this up to 4 of 8 quarterbacks this season. A lot of that had to do with the talent of the quarterback in that game and then the run to pass ratio. So Jared Goff, Jalen Hurts, Aaron Rodgers, they hit this line against the Commanders. Justin Fields, Sam Ehlinger, Trevor Lawrence, and Ryan Tannehill did not. And the Vikings are passing the ball on 65% of all downs. So I do think it works in their favor. Commanders haven't been giving up a lot of rushing touchdowns, so maybe that's, Dalvin Cook doesn't get in the red zone. What you're thinking is going to have to fall on Kirk Cousins, and he gets a new toy over there in T.J. Hawkinson. Obviously, he's not going to know the full game script, but maybe they break him out in red zone. So Cousins over 1.5 passing touchdowns. I really like today.
Hawkinson, I totally forgot that he's actually going to play this week. That is an interesting addition for Mr. Cousins.
when you bring in guys like that, obviously they're not going to know the full playbook in a week, but you can
No.
deploy them in short yardage situations. You can bring them in a red zone. He's big enough to win jump balls. It's going to take attention away from Justin Jefferson in the red zone. So maybe they're just trying to get him acclimated early on. But 2 passing touchdowns, I feel pretty good about Cousins.
No, I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, and see if you two agree. I mean, go from Irv Smith to TJ Hawkinson. That seems like a step up in the red zone, right? I feel
Definitely does.
I mean, TJ's had some really good nuggets in the red zone over years. All right. This handicap seems relatively simple, but I'm sure you're going to have some kind of nugget that's going to twist my brain around. Devontae Parker out. Jacoby Myers target share up. Am I crazy for thinking that is a logical explanation for this bet?
That's part of it. That's definitely a big part of it. You should see an increased target share for Jacoby Myers, over 53.5 receiving yards. I shopped around this morning. This line's at 58.5 on a few books. I got it at 53.5 and feel really, really good about it. So Stephon Gilmore, the cornerback for the Colts, has sadly started his decline. He's on pace for giving up the most yak of his career. He's on pace for giving up the most yards since his rookie year. So he's 32 years old. He's had an awesome career. Jacoby Myers talks about, I can't wait to play against this guy. You know, I was rookie. I was young on the team when he was there with the Patriots. Normally 2 years ago, I'd say Myers, shut your mouth, but he's actually in a good spot this week. Myers has hit this in 5 of 6 games, easily Mac Jones' favorite target, and that's with Devontae Parker on the field. And Myers, even though he's missed a few weeks, he's quietly having a really good season. I don't know if anybody has him in fantasy. 111 yards in a game, 95 yards in a game, a 24-yard reception in 5 of 6 games. So I love this line if you can get it at the 53.5, and I think it's a good matchup for him today.
Love it.
All right, one more on your card here as we go from Mac Jones to Aaron Jones because, well, the Packers are going to have to score some points somehow.
So, Jared, I did this one for you. Normally I come in with a crazy name, a Tommy Tremble, something Clay Gray, who knows who he is. I'm going with chalk, but in a different direction. So Aaron Jones to score 2 touchdowns is plus 340. We've seen a lot more 2-touchdown scores over the last few weeks. The entire season, we're actually seeing a pretty high propensity of this. But let's take a look at it. He already has 2 touchdown performances on the season. Last year against Detroit, he has a 4-touchdown game, 3 receiving and 1 rushing. In 2020, he has a 3-touchdown game against Detroit, 2 rushing and 1 receiving. So a lot of people are actually banking on A.J. Dillon to get back in good standing in this offense. He's fallen off the last couple of weeks. I just think it's going to be more Aaron Jones. So him to get 2 touchdowns, doesn't matter if they're rushing or receiving, is plus 340. That's my outlandish touchdown prop for the week, and I actually feel pretty good.
There's nothing outlandish about that. People in the chat like it when I give you shit. I just saw Biggie J27. How many times will Jared call out prop Holliday on his research? Do I call you out on your research, or do I challenge you analytically to be better, right? That's what we're going to call it.
Jared, I look forward to these, and for the guys in the chat, he gives me an opportunity to explain myself. That way you guys get to hear all the little nuggets.
You make it like I'm the czar of this show. I'm not. I don't even book you. Our producer does. I just nod and smile and hope the picks win.
We're dancing here, guys. Me and Jared are dancing partners, and it's going very well.
Yeah, so. You guys think I hate him, but I really love him. That's the beauty of this.
I enjoy it, and
hey,
I love my time.
One more I wanted to ask you about. With all the Chargers injuries in the passing game, Austin Eckler, you interested in any receiving props from him today? I mean, this is a bad Falcons defense that gives up a ton of yards. Is there anything you'd look at with in that game, particularly Cordero Patterson comes back as well? These are 2 sort of suspect defenses, at least the Chargers for the run and the Falcons for the pass, but it seems like a lot of points would be scored in that game.
Over under set at 49.5. I mean, we actually have a lot of high scoring totals this weekend, which is pretty exciting from a prop standpoint. You mentioned Eckler, especially with no Mike Williams, probably no Keenan Allen. I do think he's going to be a big part of the offense. He's as high as 7, 8, 9 receptions we've seen in the season. His over under is 51.5. I would err on the side of over in that just because of how high scoring you expect it to be. You mentioned Cordero Patterson. I don't know if he's going to be welcomed back the way that everyone's expecting. They really like Tyler Algier. He showed some things in the last few weeks. It may not be he jumps into 60, 70% of the snaps. It may be 50-50, and I'd be curious to see how the rest of Cordero Patterson's season plays out. But love the high scoring. Gerald Everett's another guy I think gets some good looks. His line opened up at 48.5. Now it's at 50.5 receiving. He could be a target for this. One last guy I do want to bring up is Kyle Pitts. He's done very well over the last few weeks. He's excelled against man defenses in the red zone and in the end zone area. He's had 3 red zone targets in the last 2 weeks. He could be a guy that punches one in. I wrote him up in my article at plus 250 to score a touchdown. So there should be 7 or 8 touchdowns. There's no reason why Kyle Pitts, Gerald Everett, Austin Eckler should be one of them. But these are the games you want to target for high scoring.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it at this.
Hold on. The 69 points in the last 2 games the Falcons have allowed. If the Chargers off the bye can't get to 30, there's a problem with LA.
Agreed.
That's all I'll close with there.
Yeah, no, listen, it's one of the games I think goes over. If you're under 51, I'll that total may get pushed up to at least 50, if not 50 and a half. But as long as it stays under 51, 27-20 seems like an easy final, or at least an easy score for both of these teams to get. So I'm with you there on that one, Jared. All right, Bobby Stanley at Prop Holiday, 2 L's, HOLIDAY. Appreciate your time as always here on Let's Bet It. Best of luck with your prop bets this week. Go cash, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Later, fellas. Best of luck.
Good job, Bobby. Love you, pal. See, there's love here on the show, guys. It's not all hate. It's love.
Oh, there you go. All right. We got some Week 9 key games that we're going to talk about. We started talking a little bit about this game, the Kirk Cousins Invitational here, as the Vikings and Commanders. Vikings -3.
I love that.
Total set at 44. Underdog 8-3 against the number in the last 11 meetings between the two teams. Over has gone 6-1 in the last 7. And over is 4-0 in the last 4 meetings in Washington. Now, Jared, the one question in this game for me is we've seen the Commanders' defense during this 3-game winning streak really play a ton better.
Yeah.
They have absolutely stepped up and really started to put the clamps down on the defensive end. And, oh, by the way, they've done it without Chase Young. But the argument is, well, they did it against the Bears offense that stinks or did stink. They've done it against the Packers offense that's all out of sorts, and a Colts offense that had Sam Ehlinger and generally just been a mess all year long. So did the defense get better, or did they just play weaker opponents offensively? I think we'll find out this week against an offense like the Minnesota Vikings. That said, if I had this at 3.5, I'd probably lean on the Commanders.
Yeah, and some very respected people in our space gave out the Commanders at 3 and a hook this week. That's why you saw the hook evaporate. I would still nibble at 3 if you can get even odds. I took a unit at that price. I wouldn't go crazy at 3 because obviously the number matters. At that particular number matters more than any other number in the league. So don't go nuts betting the Commanders as a contrarian play at 3 unless you're getting, I think even odds would be probably a nibble for me. This isn't getting back to 3.5, guys, even though a lot of people are betting the Vikings, and it makes sense. I mean, I think Minnesota's, certainly showed well. They're 6-1, but when you dig a layer deeper, net yards per play. Actually, these two teams are dead even in net yards per play, which is a category that I take pretty seriously this time of year. A lot of the other analytical categories say that the Vikings are a pretty average team. Kirk Cousins is in the teens in that EPA, CPOE category that we use to grade quarterbacks. You see the Vikings defense has certainly shown some cracks this season. I'm not running over, man, woman, and child to bet them in any capacity as a road favorite. So that's where I struggle with Minnesota in this spot. No, by the way, this line opened 1.5 over the summer. It was 2.5 last week, and then it hops through that key number, and that's why we saw some of that buyback on Washington. I think Minnesota at their core is a mediocre team with some nice weapons. I don't view them as a 6-1 NFC favorite like I maybe view the Eagles, who have a little more punch to them on both sides. I don't know. Maybe I'm not giving Kirk and Kevin O'Connell enough credit here, but I feel like the Vikings to me down the stretch might be a fade.
Gotcha. Next game we will take a look at Rams and Buccaneers. Who's going to get right today between these two teams? The underdog 12-3-1 against the number in the last 16 meetings, and a lot of those have been fairly recent. The road team 4-1 ATS in the last 5, 9-1. Rams are 9-1 against the number in the last 10 meetings, including last year's playoffs. Rams are also 6-0 against the spread in the last 6 meetings against Tampa Bay, and the over is 6-0 in the last 6 meetings. Listen, the over coming into this game might be one of the more mild surprises the way these two offenses have played. An incredibly low number at 42.5, given it's Tom Brady and Matt Stafford and all the players that they have on the offensive side. You would expect this number to be closer to 52 than 42. But that said, is where it is. Jared, I back the Buccaneers at home here. I think they're closer to getting right than the Rams are, and I don't know. It's ugly for both of these teams, but the Buccaneers still have a lot more in front of them than the Rams do at this point in time.
Completely agree. 100% on board with everything you just said. The ability of the Rams to create movement up front has completely disappeared. They are an awful team on the offensive line. They have the second lowest grade of their entire unit, giving up the second most pressures, second lowest yards per carry in the run game, less than 1 yard before first contact, which is the third lowest rate in the league. They cannot protect Matthew Stafford. Last week, they had 2 weeks to prepare for a defense that they have faced many times and are very familiar with, and frankly, a little banged up, the Niners. The first quarter was fantastic. When the script was on, everything was moving good. They were a top 10 EPA per play team in the first quarter, and then Sean McVay's script wore off, and you saw talent against talent, and it was a disaster. 34% success rate from the second quarter on offense for this Rams team. I don't know what the problem is besides the offensive line. The rest of the team, I know they lost Odell, but they gained Allen Robinson. For the most part, it's the same weapons that Matthew Stafford is throwing to. I know the running backs have been a little dinged up, but it's still Stafford and Kupp, and it's still a couple of decent tight end weapons. And you get Van Jefferson back, and it hasn't worked. Now, maybe this is the day that they turn it on, but when you can't block, I feel like that's a problem. And this is also a big revenge game. LA went into Tampa last year and knocked the Bucs out of the playoffs. Trust me, Tom remembers that, and I'm sure they're watching that film this week. So we'll see what Tampa shows, because they've had their issues as well. But if you were going to ask me, I graded this when I sent the note to the bookmaker this week that I correspond with. I sent it in toast grades. So to me, the Rams are fully burnt toast, like you left it in for too long. The Bucs are just lightly toasted. Like, I think there's some upside there still, especially with the division being weak. We'll talk more about this game in a bit, but I really think the Bucs and the under is the way that I would play this game.
All right, one more. We talked earlier about Titans in Kansas City on Sunday Night Football and the quarterback situation for the Tennessee Titans, whether it's Tannehill or Malik Willis, we'll figure out. Titans 5-2 against the spread in their last 7 meetings with KC. The underdog 5-1 in the last 6, and Titans 5-1 ATS in their last 6 meetings overall. This has always been a typically favorable matchup for Mike Vrabel and company. It's kind of the matchups that you see, the old Bill Belichick matchups that, he finds a way to keep his team in games against a better opponent, although not many opponents were better than him. But regardless, you get the point. That said, Jared, it's Andy Reid off a bye. 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 If you still believe that matters, typically Andy Reid off a bye has been really, really, really good over the years. So how do you see this one going down?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the numbers here. With 13 or more days to prep, so you could throw the playoff games in there too, the divisional games when they've had that bye. 27-6 straight up, but just 21-12 against the spread. So you're seeing a little bit of, win, no cover vibes there. Not a lot, but
still over 60% at 21-12.
Still over, yes. The numbers are still good, but the way that we talk about Andy Reid off the bye, it's like infallible. Like he never loses. Right. There's been some trip ups there, and I'm curious to see with the spread this big. I didn't have enough time to run that specific screener, but with a double-digit spread, what's the ATS margin off a bye? That one would be the one that's curious to me. Now, that being said, this is also a massive revenge game. This might be a bigger revenge game than the Bucs-Rams, even though Bucs-Rams was in the playoffs, because the Titans and the Chiefs have had multiple games over the last few years in big spots. This seems to be, I don't want to call it an AFC rivalry, but it seems to be a recurring, you turn the clocks back every fall. Well, we get a Titans-Chiefs game right around this time that's important. Last year's game was nuts. Derrick Henry threw a touchdown pass in that game. That's how crazy last year's game was. 27-0 at half. I can't imagine what the second half action was on the Chiefs in that one. And they didn't cover because it was 27-3 for a final. So I could see Kansas City being very spicy early on in this game. I could see Andy Reid pulling out some kinks. But I'll be honest, at their core, the Titans are still a really good football team. They just don't have the talent, I think, at the top that Kansas City does. And I think they're a well-coached team, and I think Vrabel will have these guys ready to play, and that's why it always scares me. If you want to say, that's when we're talking Jets-Bills, laying double digits with the Bills, I kind of, you know what? I'm going to rescind my answer. I would lay it with the Chiefs in this spot. We'll tease the Chiefs, too. If you get from 12.5 to 6.5, I think that's a good number. Something tells me Kansas City's very spicy in this game early, and we'll see if that ends up mattering in the final score. But I have a feeling Kansas City is going to be very up for this game.
No, I don't doubt it. Mike Vrabel, again, finds a way defensively to limit Patrick Mahomes. Always has. And I know that the Titans are shorthanded on offense, but put it this way, this is a correlating bet situation with the total. If this thing goes over, the Chiefs are covering. It's because they scored 40 and the Titans can't catch up. If it stays under, I think the Titans are easily covering this game. So, I think that's kind of just whatever you believe how the game will break down offensively. You mentioned teasers, Jared. You mentioned the Chiefs down to 6.5. Another team worth teasing to you is whom?
Yeah, so I'll be honest. Now that we're talking a little bit about this Rams Bucks game, if you believe the Rams are going to play better today, that technically is probably the best teaser spot of the week. Just bones on bones. You get from 2.5 to 7.5 in a very low total game, or 8.5. Excuse me, my math is way off this morning. That's a really good teaser spot, but you have to believe in the team that you're teasing. Just because it's a good teaser spot doesn't mean you have to tease it. I personally don't believe in the Rams today. So we'll take, and I bet this teaser last night because I do think you're getting some value under a touchdown with the Chiefs. And I know it's not the ideal teaser spot. We're not getting it through both key numbers, but we're getting it through 10 and we're getting it through 7. So those are a secondary key number and then a major key number. The other teaser spot that I do like this week that matches all the criteria, besides one, is the Seahawks through both keys from 1.5 to 7.5. And if this game plays out as I expect it to, if it plays out like it did the last time around, this is going to be a lower scoring game between two division rivals. And if that's the case, I'll take one of those teams through both keys and hope that it's a 3 or a 6 or a 7-point game. So I did bet one. I didn't put this in the column this week because I wasn't sure. I was leaning this way, but I just wasn't sure what Tennessee's quarterback situation was going to be, and I didn't want to give out a play on Thursday when I had no idea who's playing quarterback for the Titans. We have a better sense now. I think it's going – I'm not going to say Hooker. I think it's going to be Malik Willis. It feels like it's moving in that direction, but I don't know for that 100% sure. I will say this. If it is Malik Willis, this line goes to 14-15 immediately. And then the teaser value is gone. So if you want to tease this game hoping it's going to be Willis, you do it now. If you wait and it's Tannehill, maybe this goes down to 10 and it, I think, loses a little bit of teaser value, but not a ton. You could still tease it. But again, I think the Chiefs are going to put up a big number today against that Titans defense. I really do.
I would add one more teaser leg that I would put at the top of my teaser list, and that's the Jaguars getting 2 points at home, take them through 3 and 7, get them to 8 against the Las Vegas Raiders. I think they're applying one. However, I would stay away from the Bengals, getting them from 7-1. Something about that game just doesn't feel right. And maybe it's the Bengals on a short week. Maybe it's because their offense played so bad. Are the Panthers a live dog? Maybe. I don't know. There's just something about that game that doesn't necessarily feel right to me. But the Bengals are in a fairly desperate spot after losing a divisional game on Monday night. So that'll do it for Talking Teaser to me. I want to remind you guys that Let's Bet It is presented by Superbook Sports. Go to superbook.com or download the app today. This season, we're all rooting for safeties. That's because Superbook will give you a $50 bonus on each safety scored this season. Just place a $100 pregame bet on any spread or total. And if there's a safety in any game on Sunday, any game at all, you get a $50 bonus. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Again, Let's Bet It, brought to you by Superbook and superbook.com. Jared, that'll take us to our website, Pickswise.com, and the 3-star plays of the day. I know you have one up there, but there may be some others up there for the fans to put their eyes on.
I do, and unfortunately, it's moved to the point now where I would not bet it this morning. But hopefully you bet it earlier in the week on Wednesday when it was posted. Raiders -1. Andrew Ortenberg's done. Listen, I wish I could be inside of his mind when he gets some of these 3 stars, because he's been doing a fantastic job this year. Howard Bender's got a couple on there as well. Certainly want to hear from him. And then Caleb Wolfinger also has a 3-star play. It's been a good year for the NFL 3-stars. I don't have the record off the top of my head. Somebody asked me on social media earlier this week, and I tweeted it out. So you could go find it out if you're that interested with how they've done this year. But it's been a good year for the NFL 3-stars. Credit the Pickswise editorial team, and we hope we can keep it rolling today.
All right, that'll bring it to our plays of the day. Jared, age before beauty. There we go. You will lead us off today.
Thank you very much, sir. So this is the other play that I had in my column this week. I had 2 bets in the column this week. One of them was the big boy, the Raiders. This is the undercard, but still I think has some value if you can get it beneath that key number of 3. And our friends at the Westgate have obliged kindly. You have to lay 20 cents for it. But again, at that key number of 3, I would be willing to lay an extra 10 cents to get 2.5. And that's where we are with the Bucs right now. Listen, we talked about it a little bit in that last segment. This Rams offense cannot create movement right now. And you have a Bucs defense that's been pushed around a little bit over the last couple of weeks, especially by Lamar Jackson in the second half of last week's game. They have a little bit of extra time to prepare. And I think when you look big picture, Mark nailed it. There's a lot more to play for the Bucs when you see the Falcons at the top of the AFC or NFC South than the Rams do when you see the Rams, when you see the Niners, and then the Seahawks right there in front of you. And there's a lot of ground to make up for that LA team who clearly has had a Super Bowl hangover. I like the fact that Tampa's getting healthier in the secondary this week. Murphy Bunting and Carlton Davis both back. That is huge. So not only is Cooper Kupp a little banged up, he's going to play. He practiced, but still ankle injury. We'll see if he's 100%. Not only the issues up front for the Rams, but now you have a better, healthier secondary for Tampa Bay that's off that mini bye. This is a very important game for both teams. I think the Rams, I don't see what I saw last year with Stafford and the confidence and the ability to push the ball down the field. And I think that it is going to be a win for the Bucs. So I'll lay it. This is a 2-unit bet, risk 2.4 to win 2 units. That's how I laid it out in my column, and I will stay consistent with that here on the show. Bucs laying 2 and the hook today at – actually, no. Is it a home game for the Bucs, right? Yeah, it's a home game for the Bucs. Yeah, got to flip that on the bottom there, but that's okay. Home game for the Bucs today at home, 2.5.
All right. I don't often go to totals, but couldn't help but stay away from this one. Miami in Chicago to take on the Bears, and a total set at 45.5. Jared, I'm going to play the over here. Look at the Chicago Bears the last 2 weeks, averaging 31 points per game, and in both games have run for over 240 yards as a team. Justin Fields seems to be figuring it out, or at least what his role in the offense is. Now, I know the Dolphins are good against the run, but that's traditional run offenses. They're not facing a quarterback like Justin Fields. Well, they did earlier this year, Lamar Jackson, and he ran all over them. So that said, I like Chicago here to do their part and continue to score at a really high level. The one thing Chicago we know is bad defensively. They can't stop the run at all. Miami should have plenty of room to run, but still you're getting a quarterback in Tua and all the passing weapons that can find their way through this Chicago secondary. I think both of these teams can easily get into the high 20s. The weather died down, and that was a big plus on what I was waiting for in this game. We saw some tough weather in the Midwest yesterday during college games, but you're going to get a sunny, dry day. Winds a little gusty, about 10 to 15 miles an hour. Shouldn't affect the passing game too much. But given what Miami has, the short passes and the yak should be more than enough for those guys to run all over the field. Give me the over 45.5 between Miami and Chicago today.
I like it. Can't argue with it. Tua's, the numbers on Tua when he's on the field are off the charts. It's really impressive year for them.
Listen, as long as Chicago doesn't lay an egg today offensively, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah,
so
totally agree.
We never, ever lay an egg here on Let's Bet It. We appreciate you guys joining us. Again, make sure you subscribe to the Pickswise YouTube channel. Make sure you download the Pickswise app, available on the Apple Store and Google Play. For Jared Smith, I'm Mark Zinno. You guys have a wonderful Sunday. Best of luck on all your bets. Go cash some tickets. Have a great Sunday. We'll talk to you tomorrow for another edition of Let's Bet It. Have a great day. Go get it. Go bet it. See you tomorrow.